we really want to home on is the estimated disaster bond cash flow through 2025 or September 1st, 2025. Also touch upon the CDL, the Community Disaster Loan, and also high-level recommendations to the board, or to the commission, excuse me. All right, it's turned on. Where am I pointing to? There we go. There we go. I want to introduce each of our committee members. First and foremost, our MVP is Twyla Miller. Ms. Tender, I know that you were the commissioner that recommended Mrs. Miller, and I can tell you, being a former deputy finance director of 30 years and a resident of 40 years, she brought a lot of good historical information for the other four members. So thank you for choosing her. Al McCambry. Al is always seems like he's running late for our committee member meetings. He's probably about 5 minutes out, but he's got an excuse. He's coming from Point St. Joe. I've had the privilege to work with Al in the last several years on different boards, and he's a great citizen of this community, and he's the dean of the workforce development at Gulf Coast State College, and he has 13 years as a resident. Mr. Joey Ginn from Centennial Bank, a good friend of mine and colleague in the past, a 25-year resident of Lynn Haven, and multiple years as a banker. Mr. Brian Gray, retired military. I think everyone knows Brian, and it says long-term resident. And I confirmed with him today, he tops us all at 56 years, and we appreciate your serving. That's right, that's right. And then myself, I'm Frank Hall. I've lived in Lynn Haven for 26 years and 41 years in Bay County. And I'd be remiss to say, Commission, with the staff that was on the board, with Vicki Gaynor, City Manager Gaynor, and Kiki Roman, they made it very easy for the committee of getting information in a timely basis and being able to answer our questions. Because I can tell you from Joey and I, we talked a lot about refunding. Well, refunding in our world is refinancing. And so there was a lot of terminology in governmental accounting or governmental finance versus commercial finance. And I'd be remiss to recognize, I want to recognize two people here too that we have in the audience, Mr. Jay Moody and John Music. That John, it was instrumental in gathering and getting approved of the bond, the disaster recovery bond. So at the end of the session, if you guys have any questions, we've got additional individuals that participated with us. Moving on to the objectives of the committee that was defined to us. Review the existing debt commitments, review the historical debt trends. We wanted to meet with the bond consultants, identify any potential debt reduction or restructuring, and report our findings back to the commission. We started meeting on June the 18th. We met for every 2 weeks from June the 18th. Participation was from all 5 members were very participant in the perspective of giving input. We had community input at each of the meetings. It wasn't well attended as some of the commission meetings, but we did have participation from citizens. We reviewed at the meetings, just to give you a high level of what was discussed, we looked at each bond and note and was individually reviewed. The detailed discussion and history behind the 2019 disaster recovery bond. We had an overview from your consultant, or the consultant from our bond consultant, in reference to the bond market trends and what looks like in the future. We spent 2 weeks, 2 sessions on cash flow of the 2019 disaster recovery bond balance. We also talked about the hurricane insurance settlement, the CDL and the components of the CDL. We perused on and talked about the American Rescue Plan, and there was discussion of potential repayments of the loans if could be done, and discussion of recommendations of potential restructuring. Now, the next section, who better off to lead this off, is Twyla, that has the historical knowledge of where the the city was and where it is currently. So I'm going to turn it over to Twyla. Twyla?
Thank you. Commission. Okay. And thank you, Commissioner Tender. I reluctantly accepted, but I'm thrilled that I did. I really am. I really am. Basically, we're going through the historical data, and it became clear to us pretty quickly that had there been no hurricane, everything would have been rocking on as it had been for years, and everything would have been pretty much steady and pretty much in line with what other government entities experience as far as their bond debt goes. We did have in 2017 and 18, we had the 17th Street ditch filling and the surtax paving, which knocked debt up about 15 million, but now it's already down to about 10 million in what we owe for that. And then, of course, in 2019, there were two events, one being the hurricane. From 2018, we incurred debt in 2019 for that, and the relocation of the utilities for the widening of 390. The state generously loaned us $10 million to do that. So I think that's basically it. I think everything looked as normal as it could be to me. I mean, as far as prior to those events, money was used to do water and sewer infrastructure. And that's typically what bonds are for, is water and sewer infrastructure. And so if we hadn't had a hurricane, I think things would have been a lot different. So I think all in all, it was, I don't think there were any great surprises. Everything was just as we expected it, pretty much.
I want to move on to the current, and again, continuation of the debt. As you can see, that it accumulated to $68.8 million, and that $68.8 million also included the CDL of $5 million. And, you know, I know there was a lot of discussion about, is it 64, is it 68, is it 72? But, you know, when this came about, and the reason that the debt committee was assembled, as a citizen, I was really concerned of knowing where we were at, what was going on. And as you can see at FY 2020, we're at $68.8 million. And that's just this right here. And again, and it's also depicted that it does not include the CDL, the $5 million. At a fiscal year, FY 2021, we're at, say, call $60 million. And the breakdown is in each of these funds, FY 2021, from the general fund, disaster recovery, surtax, water, sewer, and stormwater, to give you $59.7 million. And again, that does not include the $5 million from the CDL. Now, the biggest thing that we all know about is the disaster recoveries, $31.8 million that was obligated by the city in 2019. And Jay's here and John's here. If the city did not obtain that $31.8 million, the city would have been insolvent, plain and simple. But now we have to pay back the $31.8 million. Not only that, we've got to rebuild this beautiful city. The city is, and what I wanted to reiterate and emphasize here, these are estimates. Estimates we spent 2 sessions talking about the cash flows coming in and the cash flows going out, and where will we be at. So we did it on a conservative basis. So we're projecting 4 years out. Where are we going to be at? So I'm not going to break it down because the projects you guys already know about, but the projects that we're looking at is $28.5 million that we're somewhat obligated to do. Currently, estimated cash on balance as of 8/30/2021, we have $24.8 million in the bank. Now, there's some inflows and outflows. A lot of these, the majority of these projects are going to be reimbursed by FEMA, and we've got insurance coming our way. So if you look at it, now, the lump sum that we looked at it for the projection for, and we were looking at every 6 months what we were projecting, we're projecting $24.4 million in reimbursable FEMA dollars, plus $6 million from insurance settlement that you have allowed the city manager and the mayor and your attorney to negotiate a settlement. In a perfect world, if it all comes in, we're at $30.4 million. Remember, we're obligated to $28.5 million, less progress payments as of 8/15 of $3 million. We're ballpark $25 million. Well, we've got to pay that $31.8 million back. So projected debt service between now and 2025 is $13.3 million. So the total outflow, if you sum them all up, is $38.8 million. The estimated cash balance that we will have on September 1st, 2025, again, an estimate, we'll have $16.4 million. At that time, on September 1st, 2025, we will have an outstanding principal balance of $21.6 million. As you can see, we have a deficit. We have a deficit of $5.2 million. And just remember that the $5.2 million is something that we need to consider going forward. Now, let me move on here. So remember that $5.2 million as we come along. Now, we've talked about the CDL. Remember, it was a $5 million loan from the state, and there's certain things that have to happen in order for it to be forgivable. We're anticipating that this will be forgiven in 2022. That money has already been deposited into the general fund, and it has been spent, okay? But if we meet the certain triggers, that $5 million, and staff feels very confident that it will be forgiven, that $5 million will go away. But let's think about it. If for some reason it's not forgiven, you have a liability of $5 million still outstanding. So the 5.2, another $5 million, you got $10 million that you're dealing with. Now, I want to look at, we were trying to be realistic in our thought process here and what we were dealing with. And, again, looking at rebuilding a complete city, new city hall, new ball fields, everything that we're spending, and having a $5 million deficit is not that bad. But that's, again, if we're dealing with if everything turns in correctly and we don't have any shortfalls. So we came up with the 4 R's, okay? Reevaluate. Since 50% of the city's debt revolves around the disaster recovery bond, we need to stay on top, well, not we, you need to stay on top as a commission of where we're at. Monitoring the payments from the insurance company and FEMA to ensure the projected funds of cash flow are on track. Number 2, inflation. We all know inflation's hitting us hard. Closely monitor the budgeted projects to ensure the projects are within budget, and we control costs and overruns and change orders. 3, since we've already talked about the $5.2 million in September 2025, we know that we owe it. We have 4 years. So what do? You have time to budget for it. You have 4 years to budget for the deficit of the $5.2 million. What are the opportunities? There could be a possibility of opportunity with American Rescue Plan. There's too much information out there, but as things come about, that is something that you need to evaluate. Number 2, efficiency opportunities within the general fund, cost-saving opportunities to pay down the debt. Reevaluate the surtax bond. You guys are doing a fantastic job on the surtax. It's paying down. It's scheduled to pay off in 2027. You've already taken a step in the past with the sinking fund. Okay, sinking fund. Last year you paid an additional principal reduction down. With the next 12, 18 months, with tax revenues anticipated to increase, reevaluate in next year if there's additional funds that can be paid. The reevaluation centers around the disaster recovery, and the surtax. There's also opportunities under refinance. If we have $5.2 million outstanding, everything's still tracking, there's a call provision that you can refinance that bond in August 2022. So I encourage you to look at it to see if there's a need to refinance it, not to string it out, but to take it if there's an opportunity to get lower cost and to save the city additional dollars. And also there's an additional bond, the Regions bond at 3.55, talking with John and your consultants to see if there is an opportunity, again, from a cost-benefit analysis to see if you can save dollars. Third, restore. Restore citizens' confidence. Transparency going forward. I know that there's been a lot of discussion, and we don't talk about debt because sometimes debt is a taboo. But be honest with the citizens, let us know where we're at, and so we can face the piper together. And the last one, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, is recoup potential funds after litigation. There might be a potential, but I wouldn't put too much faith on it. You got to remember, if going back to that $5.2 million, if we didn't have a fraud that was committed to this city of approximately $5 million, we'd be in good shape. But it is what it is, and we have to deal with it. With that being said, I'd like to open it up to questions and comments. Thank you.
Any questions from the commission?
Yes. Do you think this is something, I know we put this out for 90 days. First of all, thank you for doing this. There's a lot of great information. Appreciate everybody doing this. It's a very important topic, as you know, for me. And I know we initially did this for 90 days. Do you think that this is something we should continue to do after the 90 days or not?
Yes and no. No, I do think that from citizen input, 6 months from now, maybe reconvene. I don't think it needs to be an ongoing, but I do think if you want to have citizen participation, 6 months for a year from now, ask for volunteers and to serve on this committee. The meat and potatoes is staff. The staff, I feel very confident. I'm a citizen, and I was concerned of where things were going. But as a citizen and listening and getting the information, I feel very comfortable. But I think this would be a good attempt to have the citizens be involved, and it's a worthwhile committee. Okay. I tell you, I took a lot of pleasure of serving on the committee, and I felt like I gave back to my community.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say thank you so much, too, because I think there are a lot of people that needed clarity. And Twyla will tell you, I had to twist her arm tight for over an hour, but I felt very safe, and I was very comforted the fact that we could get residents of Lynn Haven that knew what they were talking about to come together, and it makes a big difference. And I tend to agree that it would be a great thing to continue maybe next year or something like that. Right. And maybe not drive it out so long that you all, don't want to ever do it again. But I know I feel a lot better. Thank you.
But the 90-day duration, to be honest with you, to get up to speed and meeting every 2 weeks was perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. And I want to thank all the board as well. Like my compatriots here did, everybody worked hard. They took time out of their schedule, out of their life to come do this. And I'm thankful for everybody that came out and worked on this. Just to cut through and make it layman's terms as possible, Frank, given everything the city of Lynn Haven's been through since 2018, including the pandemic, which wasn't really mentioned here, but it still had an effect on the city. When you cut right through to the bottom of it, we're doing okay?
I do think that we're doing okay. I mean, under the circumstances, a Cat 5 hurricane, a pandemic, changing commission, it just, there's a lot of good happening in the city.
Sure.
It's a hiccup that we're having to deal with, but I would keep my eye on the ball because, one of my concern if I was managing this process is making sure that $5.2 million gap does not expand.
Right.
And I think now is the opportunity as a commission. I know that you're going through your budget and then you have a semi-annual review, is to start to look at it. What do we need to do to apply additional principal reduction, or do we have funds? In the American Rescue Plan, there might be a great opportunity, a windfall, to knock some of that debt off.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody who served on the committee, Frank, especially you, Al, Twyla, and Joey. Were you on the committee? I sure appreciate guys like you serving our city. So I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And I know I had met with you early on. I think after your first meeting, we had a chance meeting, and I think you told me that we were going to be okay, but you're spelling it out to where we've got some, probably backwards budgeting to do, and to try to always remember that $5 million's sitting there on the back of our minds. So we've got time to try to shave at it here for the next couple of years. So I can't thank y'all enough. So thank you.
Any additional questions from the commission?
That was easy.
Now, Mayor, if I may, I do agree with what you guys were saying. I think that we should maybe look at an annual committee where they get together, because there's, like Mr. Hall said, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of dynamics that'll be changing over the next few years. One of those is population growth, of course, which is going to change those numbers as well, and how we can budget. And so I think it's a great idea for us maybe to do that in a year.
Maybe I don't know, it's just a suggestion, but you're the expert, you tell me, but is this a good time to try to do this when we're doing our budget at the same time, to line it up?
It probably would. I would agree with you.
Okay.
So if you have input from the committee of just thinking in the background of what you need to look for, I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Frank, would we also think about working with John, who is one of our financial consultants, to be a part of looking at the market and seeing when there's a good time to refinance? John was really good at helping us, he and Shay Moody both, through the bonds. So that was also something that we talked about within our committee meeting.
Yeah, and again, I apologize if I didn't emphasize enough, especially under the refinance perspective. You need to keep John at your side. I think he has the best interest in the city. He knows what he's talking about, and he got the deal done for you guys. And just like what he said before, it was a bad time to get a $31 million basically unsecured debt, and he got it done. So I highly encourage that you keep with John and others by your side and make sure that you guys consult them, because they're the experts.
Does anyone have any questions about the bond? We do have John here who
John.
can answer those questions.
Yeah.
Just join for 1 second. I met you, but I didn't met any of you guys. You're all new commission. I'm John Mazik with the Fraser Lanier Company. And the one thing I wanted to say is that Vicki and I went through a rating agency presentation to Moody's rating service, who rates your bonds, which sort of, it's the same thing as getting your credit report at the bank. It really is. We believe that you all will get an upgrade on the 31st. They're going to release your credit rating, latest credit rating on the 31st, and I have every reason to believe you're actually going to be upgraded. And that is because of extremely strong management. It's keeping guys like Jay Moody around, and these guys, we talked to them, Vicki and I did, about this very commission that these guys put together. They thought that was a terrific idea. They had not seen that before. These bonds were sold in for sure a crisis. We had a storm and a indictment and all kind of crazy things going on here. And I think you're going to get a very positive report on the 31st. We'll, of course, submit that to Vicki and to you, Frank, and that's all I got. Any questions of me?
Any questions for John?
The update, like, would that secure, like, is that like a rating where you can bond out more in the future, or?
What that will mean is that the investment community, which is really the rating agencies, are seeing you as a better risk. However, as these guys put in their report, the bonds that we sold in August of 2019 are not callable, meaning they can't be repaid in any way, shape, or form until August of 22. There's a 3-year call. We picked 3 years because that just seemed right. There was no rhyme or it was just the best guess, and it turned out to be right. I think you're going to get a lot of money in hand within that 3-year period. You'll be in a position, meeting with these guys, to decide whether to pay that down or whether to keep this cash on hand. That's your call. You're in a storm-prone area. Cash, as you well know through this experience of Hurricane Michael, is a darn good thing to have in a coastal community. If you were, inland 100 miles, would it make sense to keep a balance sheet that has a large amount of money on it? Probably not, because it's the people's money, and you're just stewards of that money. This is a completely different situation. You all have some recent history that may lead you to conclude to keep more cash on hand, but that's what these good guys are here for.
Thank you.
So you've got good news, I believe, coming on the 31st. So thank you.
Thank you for doing everything.
Thank you. Mr. Moody, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
That was the best news I've heard in a while. That's good.
Any additional questions, Commissioner Tender?
I would love a copy of that presentation if we can get one. Okay, she can send it to us. Good, thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the commission? All right, presentation adjourned.
Oh, Mayor, I'm sorry I was late.